Ben, welcome to Monitoring the Situation.
Thank you so much. It's great to join you. As I was saying in the break, I saw that people on X didn't think you were hot enough to host this, but I really disagree with that and think you are.
Thanks.
We appreciate that, and yeah, it's early days for us. And you reached out saying that we should come on your podcast, and I said let's do it home and home. Why don't you come on and let's have a conversation? I'm curious what you were most interested to talk to us about.
Oh, I mean, you and I met Eric when I was working on a story about these kind of secret group chats that you were part of organizing for Mark Andreessen, which I see as sort of part of his long attempt to kind of think through how to create an entirely new media that will replace and destroy the hated lamestream media. And I guess I'm curious, like the extent, I don't know how you're thinking about that and if this represents an evolution of that or if this is something entirely different.
I think it's part of something. I wouldn't exactly characterize it as the attempt to destroy the media, but I think ever since A16Z started, its whole thing was no other venture firms talk to the media. We're going to tell our story, and Market really led that charge on the marketing side, and they did that via the press. But then as social platforms proliferated, Mark and A16Z, of course, were in Facebook and Twitter, but then also Substack and Clubhouse and BuzzFeed, yeah, of course. So have long supported sort of media upstarts. Some of them took off phenomenally. Some of them were flashes in the pan. And I think this is part of that sort of legacy. And I think we're definitely inspired by a number of players, one of which, I mean, going back to Clubhouse, I think there was really this moment. Some people say it was inflated by COVID, but really this kind of era, for a year, whatever it was, where whenever something big happened, people would immediately go check Clubhouse and is the water cooler of the internet.
Hmm.
And that's never really been captured since to the same degree, right? Twitter had spaces, but it's just too noisy. It didn't quite take off in the same way that Clubhouse did. And I know that people were inside during COVID, et cetera, and so it was certainly inflated. But I still think there's that desire is still remnant or latent today, which is to monitor the situation, to make sense of what's happening in real time and try to get expert analysis as soon as possible.
Yeah, but I guess I mean, I think like there was also, I mean, I agree with you, and I think that's interesting. But there's obviously also another thread, which is that Mark went from being the VC who was the one who talked to media, engaged with media, and was great with media, to being the VC who talks to media least, and all the other guys give interviews all day, but not Mark, and was trying to create, first with Future, which Margaret led, and various other initiatives that didn't really work, really like an alternative. And then I mean, to me, these group chats, which I read about them on Semafor because Eric is sworn to secrecy, but like we're really genuinely interesting and influential network of people who felt, I think not wrongly during the COVID era, that like social media had turned into this place where sides brigaded each other, and that if you wanted to sort of make your case, you sort of had to organize it in private, even if you wanted to make it in public. Um, but this is kind of the opposite of that. Like one thing I noticed and I'm curious about is one like feature of those group chats was that people were like obsessively hated Taylor Lorenz. And I noticed that you had her on. Like,
Yeah.
what is that about?
She
Yeah.
was great. We love Taylor Lorenz.
Yeah.
Taylor Lorenz right now over the last month or so has been just on this incredible like techno optimist kick, like attacking the dumb people on the left who are just totally opposed to technology. She's like, I actually use Claude Code all the time. I love Claude Code. I use Waymo all the time. I love Waymo. I think humans should be banned from driving.
She doesn't want smartphone bans.
So do you think
Yeah.
the group chat people were wrong to demonize her? By
Um,
which I mean Eric.
I didn't demonize Taylor. I'm not sure. I think there's a few things that you said that I want to come back to. The Taylor event specifically, I think was
And obviously I'm speaking in caricature a
yeah.
little,
I
but
know, I know.
but I do think that those group chats are like it's too bad they were all on Signal because they were like an important part of American history. And I am curious how they were the most private form of media, and this is
Yeah.
like the most wide open. And I'm curious how you see the bridge between them.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, I think there's well, let me just finish the Taylor Lorenz thing. I think the Taylor Lorenz was the peak of that was really the Balaji Taylor, speak of another moment in American history, Clubhouse wars. And that just sort of everything escalated from that. And of course, Balaji's not going to back down. Of course, Taylor's not going to back down. And I think there was this, 1 year, maybe longer period of just intense animosity between Taylor and the sort of that tech crew of which Ace and Z was a part, and there were others. And then it seemed to die down for quite a while. I'm not, maybe because sort of the internet fragmented a little bit. People were not as active on Twitter. I'm not sure exactly, but I haven't really heard much from Taylor until I guess yesterday, until recently, where it turns out, horseshoe theory. It's funny, Mark sometimes says, it's like, wait, me and Glenn Greenwald agree on a bunch of things, or me and this person who I used to disagree with agree on a bunch of things. It's kind of it's funny how alliances evolve over time as sort of the sort of issues on the table change and people's perspectives change. I'm not sure what's led to her evolution per se, but that's.
I think it's pretty simple. I think it's just the people on the left who hate technology are just really dumb about it. Like, she doesn't want to be on the same side as these people. Pretty reasonably, I think. It's kind of like Richard Hanania with his turn against like the right, where he started calling dumb people on the right rightoids and then eventually moved towards the center. Taylor Lorenz might do the same thing.
Yeah, very possible. Okay, and let me get back to your other point, which is Mark used to talk to the media, and now he doesn't. And he's been very public about this. He basically describes a series of events where, he used to do these sort of media tours and meet all the major publications. And then 2017 or something like that, he would go on, and they were accusing him of sort of doing bad things, and he sort of felt that the tide had just become way too anti-tech, and sort of like, why continue to work with people who want you to you to fail, or and so and sometimes as we know from his follows and unfollows, he's got grudges, but he'll forgive too. So if people
I do think, sort of my own narrative of this certainly is that, like, clearly after the Trump election in 2016, a lot of the media decided that, like, that couldn't really have happened, and it was one of two things that did it. It was either Facebook or it was the Russians.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's a bit of truth to both, but like also it was that the Americans mostly. But there was a lot of reporting that I do think obvious, like some of which was overboard, and that I understand, and I think that sort of I understand why tech people are upset about it. They're right to be upset about it to a degree, but there's also, like, the thing that pains me personally about Mark, since I know this is sort of a small private conversation, is when I was running BuzzFeed News, it kind of got back to me that he sort of had come to believe that we were, because they were an investor at us, we were going after Andreessen companies in order to prove our independence, which was this kind of like project, it was a company called Zenefits, which, as a, actually kind of ignorant, politically focused New York editor, I had been kind of slow resistant to the notion that we were going to do a story about an insurance company, but we'd wound up doing one, and it was a big problem for Zenefits, but it like got projected that I was, trying to prove my independence from our investors, Andreessen, in a way that was like, honestly, it's reflective of the fact that these people, like myself, we were like never talking to each other, because it was pure projection. I do think there was a fair amount of that going on. I'm sort of optimistic that, that maybe that moment has shifted. There's a lot of kind of interesting conversation to be had.
Yeah. Before my time, I have no insight into the BuzzFeed.
I don't blame you, Eric.
Yeah. But I think
just trying to start other random fights here.
I think he's in good mood these days, and
he seems to be.
Yeah, I think So we'll see what happens there. And then let me get back to your group chat.
Though watch out if you like. He could come around to the view that because Andreessen is an investor of yours, you are trying to prove your independence from Andreessen and going after him. So be careful.
That would be more for Theo, but I'm not worried about it. I think in general, when when you're at that level, you get attacked a lot, and it's kind of I obviously consider him a very friendly and magnanimous person. Obviously, I'm biased, but let me go back to your group chat point, which is, I think that was a reaction to, and this started early, and I think this has always existed to some degree, of just like commenting on what's happening on Twitter, just in DMs or in group chats. And I think it escalated as sort of there was this real or perceived, I would probably believe it more real, of like intellectual monoculture, or just kind of like
real.
Totally. The Sound of Silence was an essay published by Jessica Livingston, Paul Graham's co-founder and wife, the co-founder of YC, talking about sort of, hey, there just seems to be too much of a cost to saying certain things, and thus we're retreating in private, and a lot of people did that. And I think these group chats always existed both on the left and the right. And they were also, during the Clubhouse era too, kind of an accompanied product. And then I separately, even before I joined the firm, I was sort of, playing along the same thesis of missing Clubhouse. Clubhouse really golden era, and saying, oh, maybe there's something here on group chats. And so I started these series of group chats. You did some, excellent reporting on one of them, particularly that was focused.
Yeah, you were like the only person who would talk to me on the record. I appreciated it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe like Sriram referred me to his previously published work or something. So.
Yeah. So the and that was sort of a political one about the election, which I thought was pretty interesting. Brought people on both sides. And
this is Chatham House.
Chatham House, yes.
Where anybody can ask Mark Cuban anything.
Yeah, Mark Cuban.
I asked Cuban about it, and he was like, "I don't even know who I'm responding to."
Yeah, it's funny. He's still on it to this day. He's
oh, is he?
Yeah, he's made a lot of friends, a lot of enemies. But yeah, it's I think this is it's kind of a different form factor of kind of the same thing, which is having a real time.
Do you think the pendulum has sort of swung back from the private to the public in a way? Like, are the group chats partly because I think Trump's victory and many of his supporters, the people, the sort of diverse coalition that had supported him, has kind of splintered as they've had to make choices basically and do things? Or just because like people are the public internet, you can say whatever you want, and nobody will get mad at you.
I do think that's happened for slightly different reasons. I think when Elon buying X, I think that sort of opened X to just a broader subset of perspectives. I think it also created, blue sky.
Way to put it.
Yeah, it just, the public social media fragmented a bit, and these group chats were just able to be had publicly because people, more filter bubbles or whatever, like, even the timeline changing to more people you agree with and things you're clicking. So
X is so weird now. Like, it's suggesting that I'm just looking at the screen.
Yeah.
I mean, the suggested followers for your talking points memo and McKay Coppins, like, cool, but eccentric.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, X, I haven't done a thorough investigation, but my understanding is numbers are up and to the right. And my sense is I don't know, there are a lot of, compliments and a lot of critiques that one can give to X. Theo, what's your take?
Yeah, I think X is pretty good. Definitely there's problems with people on X being really stupid a lot of the time. Like, Blue Sky has a lot of very mentally ill people, and X has a lot of very dumb people. There are a lot of conspiracists on X. They have not really done a good job cracking down on the complete and total misinformation accounts. Community Notes has not done as well as I expected.
All right, Joe Biden. No, but I mean, really, like, this is what I mean. I agree with. I think it's a big challenge because your misinformation is, somebody else's important truths about vaccines, and that person runs the Department of Health and Human Services. But like, isn't that the kind of core challenge that it is actually really hard? I mean, I think this is hard to have these big unpoliced spaces. I'm not even talking about
vaccines. I mean stuff like breaking, Tel Aviv has been nuked to the ground, which is something that is like observably false, that you would not find anywhere on the internet. It's just completely made up, and there's no community notes, and the account's not banned. But then again, X is still the center of the universe, and like, there's a reason we built the whole show around X. And not Blue Sky.
It definitely rewired my brain, and I'm still on there a lot. Although I do say, like, as a news editor, like, this is my job. It goes through periods of being better and worse at just like, if you log on, it'll tell you what is the big story of the day and what is true. And something about the product that has, I think, often gotten better. Like, I feel like I'm seeing better quality tweets. Also means I can often just miss the big story of the day because, and there's also this new, I don't know if you guys find this, but it sounds like if you are genuinely monitoring the situation, like, there's this fog of war where, like, it is, again, after a period where, I mean, like, if you think about the first Iraq war, if there had been live streams out of Baghdad, the White House would not have been able to say that everything was under control. And it would have really, really changed the situation, just even the immediate aftermath of war, when like the museum was being looted and the White House was saying like, no, everything's fine. And then I think social media really in these conflicts, like, genuinely, you could basically for 10, 15 years get a good sense of what was going on. And I think in this war, like, it is hard to get it. It's genuinely quite challenging because Iran has shut down the internet in their country. The Gulf states and Israel, in varying degrees, have a lot of control on what kind of images are coming out of there. Every military lies all the time, and there's all this AI imagery. I feel like it's much harder to figure out what's going on than it has been for most of my career. I don't know if you guys see that, but there's this kind of digital media fog of war that I hadn't really anticipated, but is really back.
I don't know. This has been like what getting information is like for my whole conscious existence.
Theo is 22
Hmm.
years old.
21.
21.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah. So
So
first
it's been conscious
Iraq
for like six
War,
months?
I was not born yet.
So,
That's no excuse, Theo.
um, I
Monitoring
I
retro
think that's something
causally.
we're trying to do. I mean, in general, what MTS is trying to do is basically one, represent the ecosystem. So we had Taylor Lorenz on, we have you, we had Sequoia, we're having Anthropic. We're having sort of a broad
Hmm.
tent. Um,
Are the OpenAI guys coming on, or is that like a?
no, no, yeah, they're yeah, we'd love to have them on. The we And then also what we're trying to do is, to your point on the fog of war, is really trying to create this kind of like decentralized, is basically like community of people who have expertise and can be like correspondents, almost like
Yeah.
yeah, Twitter correspondence for us, so we can try to make sense of this fog of war. But it definitely is. We already feel that, just like what's actually happening, who do we trust, how do we build up these set of sources. We're kind of discovering journalism from first principles here.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean,
Yeah,
it is interesting. I find this is to me like actually kind of a positive thing that like I think a lot of this kind of media form actually winds up tending toward journalism because it's like more interesting to listen to adversarial interviews than boring
yeah,
adulatory ones, and because you'd rather be told things that are true than lies. Like, and so I think there's like a consumer pressure to do so. Like, I think you see a lot of actually the tech podcasts, many of which mostly are like, wow, isn't this cool and interesting? But the hosts are very smart, and you saw like Dwarkesh really pushing Jensen, which I thought was, like people kind of noticed that. But that was just like that was a good, solid journalistic interview, and I think
yeah,
it's like there's a kind of really positive, just natural pull in that direction, which is
yeah.
kind of nice to say.
Totally. We have a lot of inspirations for what we do. And the inspirations for what we do, so take Clubhouse, I mentioned. There are these accounts, Unusual Whales, Autism Capital, Mario Nawfal, who sort of, aggregation
OSINT Defender.
yeah, OSINT Defender, TPN, obviously for the, sort of high quantity of podcasting, the live streaming on X, sort of the clipping operation. They innovated and pioneered a bunch of things we've been inspired by. But then also the just the corporate media. I mean, to your point, they sort of embrace the sort of corporate sponsored media. Everything is new again, and I think when someone is dunking on a thing, or when something's being dunked on for so long, there are cool points available for people who are willing to defend it and bring it back in a new way. So I wouldn't be surprised if people start proclaiming themselves journalists and sort of it being cool again.
I mean, that's how we feel here at
Yeah,
Semafor.
exactly.
Journalism is cool again. I mean, it is kind of wild just broadly that I mean, the main media story of the moment is that television is collapsing and simultaneously everything else is becoming television. It's
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Like even on our show right now, we're experimenting with different types of hosts. So for example, we have Mark Halperin, of course, sort of, legacy, media commentator, pundit, host. But then we have Theo, who's,
Who's
more,
who like rates better?
who rates better. We haven't
Who
tried.
rates better?
Mark hasn't started yet, so we'll know more in a
Oh.
few weeks. But
I mean,
that,
you're gonna have like the ruthless. You're gonna have like hair and makeup within like days. It's
Yeah.
like there's a
We're gonna have to start looks maxing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So we're really
that's what we call it.
we're really figuring
Yeah, old
out.
media was looks maxing
Looks
long
maxing for
before.
unks.
Yeah. What's your advice for us? What do you think will make this successful, or what's important to get right?
It's funny. When I was at BuzzFeed, we did a show called AM to DM with Syed Jones and Isaac Fitzgerald, which was in some sense like, because I've always been on Twitter, and like the notion was there is this sort of stream of conversation, and can you kind of get into it and talk about it? And I think the technical nature of the feed like made it challenging actually. Like when they promoted it, lots of people would see it, but otherwise it would, all the sort of stuff that I'm sure you're encountering, and that maybe they'll switch around. And it was a period when Twitter was thinking about like maybe we should become television, which I think Twitter is not thinking about now. But the thing that I always thought would be great and that we only occasionally pulled off was when it was sort of like I feel like Twitter needs like a Barbara Walters more than anybody else. Like there's somebody who's in the center of some like authentically really emotionally unpleasant and gripping drama.
Yeah.
And you need like a interviewer who is like really high emotional intelligence and who's going to like come into their living room and like you were the person who was canceled on Twitter yesterday, or you were the person who posted something really dumb or something
Soham
brilliant,
Parikh.
and like really in a very kind of earnest, serious way
Yeah.
engage with this person who is having their worst or best day on the internet, and for whom that would actually feel valuable and useful and an opportunity to like get a fair hearing and express themselves. I think the problem is usually that person does not want to do some stupid Twitter show because like they've had a bad enough
Yeah.
day. But I don't know. I like that's the thing I would like the person who isn't like, and Clubhouse had that for a minute. Like I remember like Ryan Mack and Elon Musk and subsidiarily me and Kara and other people were fighting with each other, and then like we're all on Clubhouse, and like that was interesting. I think I mean it's honestly it's a little the challenge of CNN and every other news business is like most days there's not something that interesting happening, and then you're like stuck talking to me about media, right? Like and it's hard to like program away from breaking news, but then also breaking news is probably only really happening 1% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. The main characters of the moment, that's definitely what we're
But I
trying
think
to.
finding like who is the person who like the main character every day would like most want to get a fair hearing from in a
Yeah.
way. And like
Totally.
that would be like that's a cool like we never totally cracked that, but that
Yeah.
was the thing I most wanted.
As
You asked.
yeah, no, I appreciate
Not
that.
that I've thought about this a lot.
No, no, you've been a sort of media entrepreneur across a few different ventures now, and I saw that Semafor raised earlier this year. So congratulations! Seems like things are going really well. What do you think you've figured out here? And because so much of it, yeah, as you learned from BuzzFeed, is like the distribution model, the business model, et cetera. You know, things can be fickle. We're also relying on X to start, so there's some platform risk, of course.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious how you make sense of both perhaps the BuzzFeed experience or learnings from it, and what you took to Semafor, what's working so well.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I mean, gosh, I wrote a whole book about the BuzzFeed experience, basically.
Yeah,
It's called Traffic,
yeah,
available on Amazon. And so I don't want to like re-traumatize
no,
myself and everyone else, but I do think, I mean, I guess like my sort of biggest picture view is just that like a lot of the core stuff, great stories, great journalists, secrets people don't want out, like that is not going to go away or be disrupted. And then everything else, which is to say, like what surface that lives on, whether it is a news article in print or on the web or a video stream or like somebody wrote something on Crayon and posted it to Instagram, is like totally fluid. And you have to be totally agnostic to the surface, but also very committed to the kind of that core thing. I mean, that's really my sort of biggest picture view. But I think with Semafor, it was really like I was the New York Times media columnist. I sort of like went and hid out at the New York Times briefly when there were when like the rest of media totally collapsed for a little while, and got like a real front row seat to the news business. And like everybody hates the news. Like no one is feeling. You could not find anyone if you say like, "Hey, do you think like the news media is doing a good job, and do you like it?" Like it is very hard to find people who say yes. And so I think we just tried to listen really hard to like what is driving people crazy right now, and it is I think this sense of being totally overwhelmed by the amount of incoming on one hand and then not knowing what to trust in the other.
yeah,
And then also this real hyperpolarization of media that was driven obviously by social media. And so I think at Semafor, like the core thing we're trying to do is just so go straight up the middle, really be very kind of radically open to different perspectives, different political perspectives, different global perspectives, not really imagine that we're going to like that our job is to resolve arguments between smart people who have different perspectives, or that are we have or to serve an audience who's like looking to us to be told what their politics should be.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think we've actually that has gotten a really good reception. And then for us, like, the surfaces right now, like a lot of people read our email newsletters, and then we have events. We had a huge event in Washington, probably the biggest CEO gathering in the US this year, called the Semafor World Economy, had 500 CEOs and half the Trump cabinet, and did lots of great interviews. And so that's sort of what we are at the moment, and doing that in the US, in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Gulf, which is obviously a very interesting place right now,
yeah.
and starting to kind of get into Asia.
And why Africa? Just because not many people are doing it there, and it's an important place. It's like a way to sort of
Yeah, we
compete.
when we launched, like we had this, I mean, like I guess this is actually sort of us being like experienced enough entrepreneurs that like we launched with this kind of maniacal global vision and wanted it to be everywhere, but also like at BuzzFeed in particular, really like learned a lot about not spending all your money on very challenging businesses, international businesses, and wanted to sort of be globally born and and also invest in a place that we could really have an impact and test our model. And so we thought we'd start like obviously in the US, the most important, 60% of the global media business basically is the US. And then at the other end of the spectrum, start in the fastest growing market with the most space. And so those were the two places we launched. And then kind of in the sense that we kind of try to fill in the middle.
Yeah. And for media companies that like Semafor that have raised tens of millions, et cetera, is what are the potential outcomes? Could it potentially go public? Could it potentially sell to a much bigger, New York Times or something? Like what?
Well, you're the venture capitalist, not me. So I mean, I definitely we didn't take any venture capital, and I
Oh, got
think
it.
and raised from family offices, from private individuals, and
Makes
people
sense.
who like I think are on a pretty long timeline. We also are our equity vests on a 10-year vest, which is I know unusual and sort of like definitely I think that for this kind of news media and for building trust, it just takes a while. And so I think we have very, very long horizons. Like that's what we're planning. And Justin and I kind of shook hands on doing this for at least 10 years, but I would imagine more.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. Well, Ben, this has been a great discussion. Thanks so much for
This was
coming
fun.
along.
Congratulations
Yeah,
on
we'll
the
add
launch.
you
Thank
to
you
the
guys.
tweet wall.
Yeah, amazing. One of our first guests. Ben, thanks so much.
Exciting. See ya.